You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin. Welcome to another episode of The WorkWire, where I'm joined by my co-host, the inimitable President and CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, great to see you.
Great to see. I love that word. I don't know how to spell it. I'm not even sure.
I barely got it.
I don't even know what it means, but thank you, because I'm assuming good intent.
Always good intent. Always good intent. But so I'm excited about today's topic, Johnny. It's a little trying to push the envelope here a little bit, but we're going to talk about the end of resumes.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's get
what?
this.
How can you do the end of a resume? But as you know, at Career Club, we work a lot with either people that have been displaced in their role. We also work with candidates who won't be moving forward in a talent acquisition process, but so they're active job seekers.
Yes.
And they're seeing these roles they think they're super qualified for, and they're not moving forward in the process. And they're like, what the heck? And oftentimes they will get pretty far down the line interviewing with someone and be the number 2 candidate, the silver medalist, if you will, and ask for a little bit of feedback. Was there anything that you would have liked to have seen that would have made me the preferred candidate? And so often it comes down to, well, the person that we went with just had a little bit more industry experience, and that just sends me through the roof. Like, really? Now, I mean, to me, just to kind of set this up a little bit more, is kind of in broad strokes, it's education.
Yes.
Hey, what is do you have a college degree? Typically, is your degree relevant to the functional area or the role that we're hiring for? And where did you go to school? Because wherever you went to school matters, in theory. And then experience. And again, I'm not trying to diminish, do you have the proficiency to do the work that is required in a given role? But at the same time, there's this really strong bias. In fact, generally, it's the first filter of, do you have industry experience? And that definition of industry can be incredibly narrow.
Yes.
So I believe that there is, kind of this forced constraint in talent acquisition, but also on the side of the candidates that we work with, that there's so many opportunities that they would be qualified for if how we were defining qualified was broader. And so I think the way that the industry would talk about that is skills-based hiring.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet there's not a lot of uniformity on exactly what that means. So from your side, Johnny, as you're working with HR professionals, and we know that there's always this air quote war for talent, and yet what we're defining as talent, I think, is a little flawed based on your degree and your work experience. How do you just sort of generally see the issue?
Man, it is. This is the issue that has proved quite vexing for HR professionals and frankly, line managers, all of us. And I start with, very briefly, we know it's suboptimal the way that we do it now. We know that we're missing incredibly talented people. But here are 3 reasons why. Hear me, right? I'm not arguing it. For those who are out there listening, said, okay, here he goes, the SHRM guy. It's one, some of it is purely efficiency. If you post a job and you get 1,000 applicants, okay? Having to go through all 1,000 of those resumes is time consuming. It's not particularly efficient, and it's exhausting. I mean, let's just admit it. If you've ever been in that position, you got these resumes. So you immediately look for things that will help take the 1,000 down to 100 or 50 or 20. And that means you rule out the people without a degree. You rule out the people who don't have X number of years of experiences in the industry or doing the job, even if in a different industry. Like what you're doing, and again, please don't hear me. This is not in defense of TA, talent acquisition professionals, but it's just practically speaking, which my response to that is thank God for AI and other technologies now, because they can actually help us solve for some of that. Human beings, if you have 20 open positions and you got 1,000 resumes and applicants every morning, applying for those jobs, it's tough. So that's one. So that's really why we've done it, is to help make the unmanageable manageable. Secondly, from a risk profile, no one ever gets fired for hiring the guy with a Harvard degree and 20 years in industry experience who doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, as the talent acquisition person, put your neck on the line and you've got to make the case to the hiring manager that this is a strong candidate based upon his or her skills, although the profile doesn't read as nicely as the other one, you're taking a risk. We are judged as human resources professionals oftentimes not only in how quickly you fill the job, but how successful the candidate is in the job.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a part of it which says, I don't want my numbers to reflect that if I were in baseball, I took a swing at some bad, what do you call those things? Pitches. Yeah, you can tell I'm not an athlete, right? But right, I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. And then thirdly, which is sort of related to all of it, is ultimately human resources professionals. Our number one challenge is to get the best talent, however so defined, into our organization. And you do increase the odds of having the best talent if that talent has been tried. What's that old saying? Past performance is the best indicator of future performance. Well, if I'm in a tech job, if I'm at a tech company and I'm looking for someone to be a programmer, if that person came from Google, Apple, Microsoft, there's just a better chance that they're going to be successful. Putting aside the cultural differences between a Google and a SHRM, but the fact of the matter is when the resume says, you got the top developer from Apple, it happens to be that he went to Stanford, check. Happens to be that he's in the right major, tech. Like, I got it. So all of those, the three, I want to set up. That's the reality of what the talent acquisition and HR professional faces.
Yeah. So, and thank you for framing that out. And this is, as you say, not, an attack on talent acquisition, nor is it a defense of talent acquisition. Where I'm trying to move to is that the workforce is changing rapidly. Work is changing rapidly.
Yes.
And I saw the testimony that you gave to the Armed Services Committee, and you're helping them understand how we got here and where we're going may not be the same thing, right? And
That's
so, kind of to your point on the efficiency and the risk management, and just, what's the best predictor that we know of performance.
Yes.
So I'm tracking with you on all those things. I think that, on the risk thing, I want to talk about that for a second. So we both know Joe Fuller from Harvard Business School,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And he leads the Future of Work project at Harvard. And I was speaking with him, and we were talking about the as appropriate in the roles that actually don't require a four-year college degree, that companies have implemented a policy, and I always pick on this one because it's just top of mind for me, but cybersecurity. Do I need to know the Canterbury Tales to be able to be a really good, entry-level cybersecurity analyst? Probably not. So, and then companies will say, hey, so, for roles like that, we have dropped the college degree requirement. But what he sees in their data is that they still keep hiring only people with a college degree. Joe, why is that? Because back to what you said, it's risk. They perceive personal risk of why did you hire Bob when you could have had Johnny? Johnny's got the 4-year degree. Bob doesn't. And so it's on you that you took a risk, even though I know what the policy says, but I also know reality. And so there's definitely that perception that we can even change the policy and still not move in that direction.
Well, and let me double click on that. As you know, as a former labor and employment lawyer, I can tell you it's not just perception. Frankly, the laws make us look at it that way. Because if you make the decision, and I'm going to use, you've got a guy who applies for a job, phenomenal experience, and can do this job. He was, great at coding and has done it since he was 12. You have a woman apply for that same job, and she has a degree from Stanford and a master's in MIT. If you give that job to that man, you are subjecting your company to EEOC claims and potentially litigation. So it's more than just, and I have to say, I've seen this over and over again. It's not an explanation. I'm not justifying or rationalizing anything, folks. I'm trying to let you know that as a labor and employment lawyer, and God forbid our plaintiff's lawyer, I take that case up every day. That you hired the guy without the college degree over the woman whose credentials clearly made her better qualified. So we have to also understand that as HR professionals, we are one of the most regulated, unregulated professions on the planet because we're subject to litigation. And employment litigation is big, it's expensive, tarnishes the company's reputation, even if you win. Again, no excuse, but you got to understand the context in which we work. No judge is going to just give you a pass because you say, yeah, but he was, building, code and writing code since he was 10, but look at her background. Mm-hmm. That could be race. It could be it could be on any basis. We are also living in an environment where we have to be really careful because someone is second guessing your decision to not offer her the job, but to offer it to this guy based purely on skills.
Okay, fair point. So
I don't know if I like that fair point. It's sometimes
because what I
noted to me, and sometimes I'm like, I mean, she didn't like that. But
what I'm saying is that I'm trying to address that there is a very broad pool of talent who is being excluded from roles that they could be successful in due to legacy requirements
and laws.
Yes. So as we think about, so if the kind of the legacy equation is education plus experience equals qualified.
Bad math.
I want to explore something with you, Johnny, that kind of says, no, wait a minute. First of all, while your experience is good, there's actually a couple of maybe things you haven't thought about. One is the lack of diversity of thought. So if all we have is people who've worked in the auto industry, working in our auto company, versus bringing in somebody who worked at Amazon or Microsoft or just Apple, I'm saying tech companies for some reason, but somebody that brings like this completely different, fresh viewpoint into the company but we've always hired people who have come from the auto industry. Well, I want to question that. On that level alone, that just bringing the diversity of experience, the diversity of thought, somebody that can say, well, we've had analogous issues at Amazon that you guys are facing at Ford. Here's a different way of potentially thinking about the problem and how to solve it. That benefits the company tremendously. And yet I see every day that the number one criteria that employers are looking at is, do you have relevant industry experience? And part of it's very understandable because back to your second point on risk, it's like, well, but if I got to teach you the auto industry, that equals time. And now that kind of branches off into two risk factors of, are you ever going to get it? And if you do, how long is it going to take you to get it? And then that means I'm paying you and not getting an ROI potentially on my hire of you. So it's not illogical that people are looking at industry. I'm just suggesting that there's this overemphasis on industry to the exclusion of considering people who don't come from the industry.
So we are violently agreeing. No surprise, Bob. I don't. So I was identifying the other argument, and that's what I found sometimes to really address an issue. I've got to understand what the other side of the argument is. I though agree with you. In an environment right now in the US, we have 8.8, almost 8.9 million open jobs. Frankly, we don't have the luxury of saying some people, just because you don't fit this perfect idea of the candidate, you come from our industry with this number of years experience at this school with this GPA and this major. Like, we just don't have it. That's why there's people looking for jobs, but employers looking for jobs to be filled, and none of the like, that's insane. So I literally agree with everything that you're saying. And so let's get to solutions. So got it. There is actually a way to get around, and I don't mean in a negative way, but to solve for the legal issue. If the company says from the top down, CHRO down, we're going to be an organization that A, doesn't require the degree, doesn't rule people out because they have criminal backgrounds or credit problems, doesn't require industry experience. That's a start because it establishes the tone and gives a framework where if you go to the EEOC later, I was just with the former vice chair of the EEOC yesterday, Keith Sunderland, who's still on, he's a commissioner. And I was saying, he was like, listen, our issue is we don't want to tell you what the rules should be at your company, but we're saying that if they're your rules, you got to follow them. So maybe we redefine, and you can do this, friends, redefine what is qualified. Qualified doesn't have to be experience in the auto industry. You can just say experience marketing.
Yes.
Anything, right? We can do that. Where we have boxed ourselves in is by requiring this much experience in the industry for every candidate until we actually want the candidate, or because it's a friend of a friend. Or then the EEOC and others come in and say that doesn't work. So start with reframing, saying we're going to be a skills-based employer. We're going to make our hiring decisions, our promotion decisions, our pay decisions based upon skills and performance. That alone will, while not eliminate, it will significantly mitigate any risk and profile. And it also internally, then when your hiring manager starts seeing, oh, Johnny over in finance just hired someone who doesn't have a finance degree in accounting, but that person's amazing. Maybe the organization actually believes us now. Or Johnny's in a retailer and he just hired someone from manufacturing, but people have to see it, Bob. It's not enough for me and you and the CHRO and others to pontificate about it. We've got to start saying, this is a skills-based, show me what you know. Even in the phrase, I heard people say education plus experience. Well, experience is education. I mean, right? You can learn on the job, or you can go off to some 4-year, 7-year, whatever school. There are ways to merge just language, how we talk about it. We want the person who can do the job, not who sends signals of I went to the right schools or worked in the right industries. And I think we're getting there. As frustrating as it may sound, and I'm sure you see people on the other side of it, it is changing the mood. I'm seeing people now, CEOs of industries, where like, where'd that person come from? How did they get this job? Because that's not the way we used to select CEOs. If you're going to be in automotive, you had to show yourself to be a former automotive industry CEO. So it didn't just apply to rank and file, by the way. As you know, middle management is plagued by this, and senior executive selection also.
So that's very interesting. So if I'm hearing you right with the EOC thing, is that we can reframe our risk profile.
That's right. Well said. Perfectly said. Okay. That's right. That's right.
So I want to pick up on kind of if I'm sort of downplaying the legacy formula, yes. And I appreciate what you're saying, that experience is education, although I think that gets underappreciated sometimes. And so I appreciate things like opportunities at work and other people that are like, no, that is education. They've been doing this for 10 years without a piece of paper on their wall.
That's right.
I agree with that. What I want to suggest, and at least kind of talk out with you for a minute, is a different formula that I think is more reflective of the workplace going forward, which is around learning agility. So the other reason that I think that industry experience will be less important is industries are being redefined very quickly because of technology,
That's
right? And business models are changing.
right.
So that's great that you knew that version of tech, like you worked at AOL. But guess what? That's like it's changed. Like we're not in a prodigy in AOL world anymore.
Yep.
So or Blackberries or like pick anything, right? So learning agility because the pace of change. I like to say this to people is that today is the slowest day for the rest of your life.
Heard you say that. It's so true too.
And it is true, I mean, just everything is changing so quickly that the shelf life of a given skill or a given experience set is actually shrinking. And so we need to continually be learning. So I need to, from a skills-based perspective, to be able to hire agile learners. That is a huge superpower moving forward. The second one would be around contribution motivation. People that want to make a difference. My ability to see that I'm having an impact is important to me, right?
That's
And so I could have a great degree. I could have, kind of ridden the bench for 10 years at some company, but I'm just sort of getting along and I'm just sort of living in the middle and nobody's found me out yet. But my desire, my motivation to contribute, might be, somewhat muted versus somebody's like, I am so behind the mission of the organization. I'm so behind the needs of the people that we serve. I'm so behind the solutions that we're developing and bringing to the market. Like I am passionate about contributing because I believe in our leadership, whatever it is that you can hang your hat on.
right.
Contribution motivation is huge. And the third one, and I save this for the last because I think it's misunderstood, is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm going to borrow a line from one of my favorite people, the CEO of SHRM, who says that these are not soft skills, these are power skills.
That's right.
Right? And we talk about empathy and humility. We've talked in a previous episode around civil conversations, but the emotional intelligence, being a high quality team member, somebody that makes the team stronger, who
Yes.
can foster healthy relationships, is not to be underestimated. So learning agility plus contribution motivation plus emotional intelligence, those would be at least three of the kind of skill buckets that I would hope that we could start to identify better and rank candidates against.
No, I think that's right. And yeah, I mean, we are in the middle of a really interesting transformation in the workplace. And it all started, frankly, thanks to COVID. I say oftentimes COVID wasn't all bad. Many ways, it forced us to rethink the entire way that we work, our relationship with work, et cetera. You know that, right? The idea that 20% of the workforce would work remotely would have never occurred. We were in single digit numbers pre-pandemic, and although it swung back to some combination of hybrid and it's real, right? What I would say is what you are talking about is you're a frontiersman. This is where the world is going. I know it's frustrating for people like you and professionals who work in this space every day, and you see really talented people being overlooked, and you're like, what gives? You're saying you need talent. I've got the talent. Who can do this job in spades, but you're not hiring. I see the frustration. Let me give you some confidence. These conversations are happening everywhere. Skills-based is not just a feel-good term. It's not, but it's change is slow in this regard because it's like a couple of analogous situations. When you ask overwhelmingly people, do you think we need to give people second chances in hiring? People formerly incarcerated, do you give them a chance to get a job? The answer is yes. But in practice, they don't hire them at the rates that they say they would hire them. College degree or not, same thing. Absolutely. And you talked about Fuller's work and others. So this is a part of the sea shift that we're seeing right now in the workplace, but progress is being made. What you're talking about, and I'm so glad we're talking about the end of resumes in the traditional sense, is you're tapping into exactly where the industry is going, where the HR profession is going. But let me leave you with this, which is fascinating. You can't just preach to the HR people. Because if I'm a talent acquisition person and I see a really talented person that I want to put before one of our hiring managers, but that hiring manager has a bias, that sometimes is your biggest, that's the wall, right? HR people say, sure, I'll hire you without a degree. Sure, I'll hire you if you're formerly incarcerated. I put you into the process, get you to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager's like, That's who's making that call. So one of the things that I'm advocating for is that we have a broader conversation in our culture, like that says you don't have to have the perfect background from the perfect schools, from the perfect companies. Like we have to relax those standards, and relaxing doesn't mean not having
Lowering.
Right, does not mean lowering. Relaxing doesn't mean lowering, but it's saying it didn't matter anyway. I often tell, when I was in the legal profession, we would have a requirement that, you had to graduate top 10% of your class to come to the law firms that I worked at. I worked 2 big law firms, and you had to be in the top 10% of your class. And I said, very little of our work requires someone to have been in the top 10% of their class. We should be honest, right? What we're doing is adding to the prestige by saying we're excluding people, and that's how we are building our prestige. But the fact of the matter is 90% of this could be done by any reasonably good lawyer. So say top third of your class could do this work just fine. But we did it intentionally, and hopefully these walls are coming down. We are relaxing the standards while not sacrificing quality. That's the pitch that we've got to make writ large to employers, and employers mean hiring managers.
Yes. No, so I want to pick up, and it's a fair point, because you're right. Talent acquisition's job isn't to hire the person. The hiring manager's job is to hire the person. I think the whole issue, I'm going to speak probably too broadly, I think so much of this lands on your second point at the beginning of this, which is around risk.
Right.
And we are wired to minimize downside risk.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you're right. I am a frontiersman, and I seek to do things aspirationally because that's the way that I'm wired. But as human beings, we are wired to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right. And so we use these proxies for risk management to help us, be safe, basically. I don't want to get fired for having done something. Right. And so, yet what I love about what you guys do, what you do specifically, Johnny, is you're trying to change the conversation.
Yes.
And we're trying to open up people's minds
Yep.
to a new world and a new way of doing things that, may feel risky, and there will be mistakes.
Of course.
There will be mistakes. But managing to the lowest common denominator is just putting a bit in the mouth of the horse, keeping progress, and I mean more social progress,
That's right.
job satisfaction kinds of things, is ultimately not serving people.
Mm-hmm.
But as we can continue to just open up the dialogue, but also give, and I appreciate what you said, like, I know this isn't a new topic, but it's how do we continue to advance it and help, as you say, both the talent people and the hiring managers actually execute against these things in their companies. Everybody wins.
Right. And I got another thing that I'd like to add, and I'm surprised you talk about this a lot, but collect the data. It is amazing how compelling the data is. So we're right now doing that in my current role at SHRM as an employer, is when we hire the non-traditional out of sector. So they're not from HR, they're not from the nonprofit. When we hire those, let's measure how they do. You'd be surprised. The data will increasingly tell you that the formerly incarcerated retain longer and perform just as well. We know that people outside of our traditional nonprofit HR space perform better in our environment. So I think one of the things as HR professionals, we and anyone listening, if you're a hiring manager, is collect the data. The data will tell the story better than Bob or Johnny ever could. These are the people who came from outside and didn't have the traditional, check the box, didn't meet those criteria, but look how they're performing. And now look at the folks who did. And it's not to knock, the folks who came from the space, whatever, automotive industry, manufacturing, whatever. But I think you're going to see that they don't perform any worse than any other group, which means the new framework is based in data. Like it's data. Then you de-risk it even more for the human brain. The human says, human beings say, the data says this is not so risky.
Right.
So that, and then you sell it into senior management as they come up with their cultural framework to say, yeah, they're going to be failures. But guess what? When we hire people from the industry, they fail. I'm in another role right now. I don't want to call a company out, but we hired someone who had the perfect background from the perfect industry. I mean, industry, everything. And 6 months later, it didn't work out. The person we replaced that individual with, notice I'm very careful not to do gender or anything because I don't want to disclose anything, but the replacement person didn't come from the industry and proved to be a freaking superstar. So when you can point to those examples, you then help with the narrative shift.
Yep. So again, I just would really want to encourage anybody who's listening, and again, thank you, Johnny, for the point around hiring managers in particular. Let's think about, how can people demonstrate learning agility?
Yes.
Tell me about a time. What's the most recent thing that you've learned? What's the most recent certification that you've gotten? Tell me that. Don't just say you're naturally curious. Show me, how you continue to learn, how you continue to adapt. On emotional intelligence, I think that, empathy,
Yes.
resilience,
and
self-understanding would be like three really key things. So like, how do you take something that's kind of squishy and like, when I'm interviewing somebody, and I think resilience would be very near the top of the list,
right?
Because of all the change that's happening, the unpredictability of that change, that being able to find people who are resilient is really, really key.
Yes.
And then thirdly, on this contribution motivation, why do you care about this role at this company and the people that we seek to serve? And because that passion, that desire to make a difference, again, will get you through. That will drive a lot of innovation. But again, that will also undergird the resilience piece too. When everything doesn't go exactly right, I'm not bailing,
right?
Because I actually care about what we do here and want to make a difference. I can't teach tall and fast, Johnny. Like when somebody shows up with some of those kinds of qualities, I'll figure out if you're a tight end or a linebacker or whatever. But when you show up with some of those innate qualities, you're building, I think, the dream team.
Yes.
That will get you. This is sort of Jim Collins. Get the right people on the bus first. They'll figure out what seat they need to be in. They'll help you figure out your strategy, but you've got to get the right people first. Then the roles will define themselves. So any kind of parting thought that you would want to leave listeners with on this whole skills base in the end of resumes?
Yeah, like the parting thought is we have a birth rate problem in our country. We also have an immigration problem in our country, and not that immigration is bad, but that we haven't sorted it, right? Yeah. So we have a talent shortage that is coming. If we think we have a war for talent now, over the next decade, we're really going to see it. Gen Z, millennials didn't have as many children. So we've got to rethink how we exclude talent from the talent acquisition process these days, because it's going to hurt us. We're not hurting. I mean, we're going to hurt them in the short term, but we're going to hurt our workplaces if we don't think differently about what talent is and change the way that we've thought about the requirements. And I love it again. We need to figure out how to end the resume as we've known it and used it in the past.
Amen. Awesome. Well, Johnny, as always, thanks for letting me kind of opine on that one a little bit. It's just, as you can tell, a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think ultimately serves the best interests of both the employers and the candidates when done well. So with that, everybody, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to listen to the Work Wire and to watch us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to this as a podcast, which many of you do, please rate and review. We want to make sure that as many people who are interested in these kinds of topics can find us. But in the meantime, Johnny, have an amazing weekend. And
that's right. And is it W for weekend or the W's for?
Yes. Yes. That's what it's for. Yes. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.